Zigzag and One, a place where we honestly discuss how to embrace the zigs and the zags in our crazy lives. Running away is not an option. Living in defeat is not an option. Instead, learning how to keep moving forward is what we'll do together, one nugget of wisdom at a time. Your host is Melanie Brown. She's navigated a few zigs and zags in her life with the determination to never give up. Expect great stories and lots of laughs. Are you ready? Let's do it.
Welcome to the Zigzag and One podcast. I'm your host, Melanie Brown. Thanks so much for joining me today. My guest, Elise Tedeschi, is a cancer survivor. And y'all, she's not just any cancer survivor. She is an 8-year survivor of pancreatic cancer. That's the type of cancer that has the lowest survival rate. So to make it 8 years, that is a miracle. To be sure, Elise is a fighter. Her overcomer attitude was a huge part of her kicking cancer's butt. She's been married for 19 years to Patrick, and they have 2 high school-age sons. And here's what she says. If there is a YouTube video that shows her how to do something, she can fix anything. Listen in to hear how God pursued her and won her heart during the fight. To me, that's the coolest part of Elise's story. I'm excited for you to join my conversation with Elise Tedeschi. Welcome to the Zigzag and One podcast. I am super excited for my guest today, Elise Tedeschi. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I heard about your story and knew that I needed to have you on the podcast because you are a miracle.
Very true.
Yes. So let's go back. In January of 2012, you hit a major zigzag in your path. Tell me about it.
Yeah. So prior to January 2012, I had been experiencing incredible back pain and, some stomach issues. Every doctor kind of blew me off. I felt like I saw every kind of doctor. I saw chiropractors. I saw natural doctors. I saw orthopedists. I saw everyone. And the pain just got worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And then finally, after seeing numerous doctors, I finally got a diagnosis that I never expected to ever get. I had stage 4 pancreatic cancer that was inoperable.
Wow. And the statistics for pancreatic cancer are abysmal.
Not good. At that time, and statistics have gotten a little bit better, but at that time, for being stage 4, I had a 1% chance of surviving beyond 5 years.
And we are now at?
Almost 8.
So, see, you are a miracle, girl.
Definitely.
Man, that is so impressive. So let's talk about what you went through with your journey. So tell me about the treatments. Tell me about how long you went through those.
Yeah, so I started, the traditional chemotherapy. It's a cocktail of 4 drugs, pretty intense. They had honestly come out with that drug a year prior. I actually had very good results from it. So after 6 rounds of chemo, my tumor was almost shrunk in half. And honestly, in my head, I actually was thinking, I can't believe it's not gone. And then I did 6 more rounds. I ended up doing radiation. I did 25 rounds of radiation along with a 24/5 chemo pump, and then had a cutting-edge surgery. But that is not actually like the biggest part of my story, though.
Okay, so tell me what is.
So I grew up Jewish, and, both my parents from New York grew up, they met at the Jewish Community Center. I like my 3 siblings, we all married Catholics. And honestly, religion to me was just that, religion. I've always felt like being Jewish was a lot about traditions and things like that. And even when we had, my husband and I, when we had our 2 boys, we sort of we went to a temple, we went to a church, and I would say to my husband, I love this church thing, but if they just wouldn't mention the whole Jesus thing. And
well, I'm sorry to say, but that's kind of the point.
Exactly. And lo and behold, I get this incredible, scary, worst diagnosis ever.
Yes.
I have been given approximately no more than 9 months to live. Inoperable, so surgery wasn't even any kind of option.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of looked at this initially in the beginning of like, okay, I got to get through this because I have these 2 amazing boys. My boys were in kindergarten and 2nd grade at the time.
Very young.
Yeah. And they needed me and I needed them. And, of course, my husband, I would always say, I'm not leaving my boys and no one else is going to marry my husband.
I understand that. When I went through my struggle, that was the way I felt about it as well.
Yeah. So the journey really started actually just before I got diagnosed, and I sort of got a knock on the door, and it was my son's friend's dad, who I didn't know all that well. I knew his ex-wife, who was one of my neighbors. He comes over and he says, I know this sounds crazy, but you've come in my spirit 3 times at church, and I know that I need to come and pray with you. And I just thought, wow, that's so selfless of someone to do that. I really thought it was just a beautiful thing that someone did that.
It didn't feel uncomfortable being that you were Jewish and weren't familiar with prayer?
The day before, I'd said to my sister-in-law, I think I need to start praying because I know this is so much bigger than me. And when he came over, just before he began to pray, my sister-in-law said, by the way, you may not want to use the whole Jesus thing because Elise is Jewish. And I said, no. You know what? I'm opening my heart to everything. Pray how you normally pray. He prays with us. I just feel like, wow, that was just amazing and so great that he was, that he did that. It just felt so special. I get diagnosed, and I will tell you that ride home from the airport, because it was during Christmas break, so my husband had to stay home with my kids. I went with my sister. I get diagnosed, and the ride home from the airport to our house was just, it's a conversation that you never, ever want to have with your husband. And part of that conversation was, what are you going to do if I die? Mm-hmm. And, he kind of said, I think I'll live up. Maybe we'll move closer to your parents and all these things. And it was a very possible, probably more probable reality for that to happen. And we had that conversation once, and we really didn't have it after that. Then it was like, okay, here we go.
Well, it's almost like a mindset, because if you start going down that trail, then you are deciding something that's not positive. You're deciding to lean towards the negative.
Right.
And I don't interview ladies who lean towards the negative. So I know that you lean toward the positive. And
yeah.
So when you came home and you talked to your husband and you talked to your children and you decided, I'm going to fight this.
Yep.
What was that mindset that you had going forward?
Well, I think I've always been a naturally positive person. I always see the best in people and that sort of thing. And I would say, people would ask me, well, how are you so positive going through this? And I would say, well, you know what? I didn't choose to get cancer. I didn't choose to go through this, but I certainly can choose my attitude. And I choose to be happy, because if in fact, I have 9 months left with my boys, I want them to have great memories of me.
Yes.
I didn't want them to be like, poor mommy, and hated when people felt sorry for me, because when you tell someone that you have pancreatic cancer, let alone stage 4, the first thing they say is, I'm so sorry. So they've already sort of put you in the grave. And then the second thing they say is, my so-and-so had pancreatic cancer, but they died. And you kind of get used to it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you just, that's where you have to really find that strength. But I will tell you, I got incredible strength from God. And the one biggest thing that happened was when I got back after getting diagnosed, my husband actually said, hey, let's have Dwayne come over. Dwayne is my prayer warrior, and he's the one that had come over earlier. Let's have him come over and pray with us. And so he comes over to pray with us, and it's January. It's cold out. I'm probably like maybe 105 pounds at that point. And he's praying with us, and here's me. I'm 5'3", and I've got my husband who's 6'2", 6'3"-ish, and I've got my Dwayne, the prayer warrior. He is probably 6'6", played football in college, and he starts praying, and he is such a powerful prayer. And as he's praying, I feel this incredible heat like go through my body. I start shaking. I feel like I'm going to get sick. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to pass out. I'm so not listening to a word he is saying. All I'm thinking is, he better hurry up because I need to excuse myself, go to the restroom, and probably get sick.
So you didn't get sick, though. But now that you know, looking back, what was that? So
I do go to the bathroom, and when I was in the bathroom for like a second, everything goes away. And I am like dumbfounded, like what was that? I'm just, and my whole hairline is completely wet. So I'm physically have, sweat. Mm-hmm. And I'm not, anyone can tell you, I'm not a big sweater. So I was kind of like, oh my gosh, like, wow, like what's going on? So I come out of the restroom, and my husband, or Dwayne, is actually pacing, and he is saying, God is in your house. God is in your house. And he is, he's just overwhelmed. My husband is overwhelmed. And I'm like, look at me. Do you see me? And I said, what was that? Because I grew up Jewish. And he goes, Elise, that's the Holy Spirit going through you.
Yes.
And I was like, I don't really understand that, but okay. And so it just kind of put us on this unbelievable journey of faith after that.
What a profound experience to start that faith journey, to have a really physical connection with the Holy Spirit. And did you feel anything about your diagnosis at that point? Did you go down that trail at all?
Honestly, I had a lot of fear. And so Dwayne would come over and pray with me, and he would come over and he would say, I know that you're fearful. I know I'm feeling fear over you. And, he would share stories in the Bible and things like that. And, really sort of would change my path. Like, let's not concentrate on this ailment. Let's just keep our eyes on Jesus. Mm-hmm. And, for me at that point, I hadn't quote unquote accepted Jesus yet. But I was just opening my heart to it, and whatever was going to happen was going to happen. And so after that point, I remember my husband saying to me, or I said to my husband, actually, I don't know about you, but I feel this incredible peace about everything. Like I just know I'm going to be okay. And my husband said, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that you said that, because I feel the same way too. And I didn't want to tell you that because I didn't want you to think this is less than what it is. And
how far into the journey was that?
Not long. Honestly, probably within a week.
So how long did you do treatments for then, before that you were given remission?
It was about 10 months.
Okay.
And really, in pancreatic cancer terms, that is an incredibly short amount of time. It's unheard of. I had a 7-centimeter tumor, and that's what the pain was. That's the pain that was pushing on my back. And so it's like, sort of this mid-back pain. And I was miserable. I remember prior to like just taking showers like 5 times a day because that would make it feel a little bit better.
Give you some relief.
But as we went through that, I did feel like every day, somehow, some way, there was a message, a gift, something from God. It was just amazing. I even gone on a business trip, and it was me trying. I was still working throughout chemo, which people think I was crazy, but I
understand that.
Yeah, because you don't want to sit around thinking like I have cancer.
It takes your mind off of it, and you feel a sense of purpose.
Yeah. And so, my company at the time was amazing to me. My boss was amazing to me. And really, I would tell other people, if you have someone in your company going through that, supporting them is just, it's so important.
Yes, the companions that come around you, the people who take care of you, feed your family, take you to doctor's appointments, sit with you when you're having a bad day. All of those things are so incredibly important when you're going through struggles.
I felt like I had truly, an army of angels per se. And even at this time, really within that first week, so I get diagnosed, I come back, I think, Thursday or Friday, and that Sunday, my next door neighbor had invited my husband and I to go to Passion City Church in Atlanta, and we go, and this is always amazing to me because we sit down, and I think this is always amazing, but a door holder, which is, the volunteers, door holder comes up to us right away and says, "Can I pray with you too?" And the diagnosis was so fresh, and I started crying right there. And my husband had to explain what was going on. And it was just so intentional from this person. Clearly God had something in her heart to say to us and knew to come to us. And that was just amazing. But people were amazing through my journey.
So how long before you accepted Christ and said, okay, I'm going to take on this faith and this is a part of me?
Yeah, so probably about 4 months into my diagnosis and 4 months into going to church, our pastor, Louis Giglio, started talking about the story of Lazarus. And I look at my husband and I am just crying, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that is me. Like, I am Lazarus. Because, of course, you tell someone you have pancreatic cancer, they already put you in the grave. So that's how I felt. And I looked at my husband and I said, I think that I got this for God to show this miracle of me. And
that's beautiful.
And at that point, I ended up getting baptized, which was amazing. And my even before that, but my life had changed. I think I always knew that I was going to accept him, but it was just so different just because I grew up Jewish. That's not what you do when you're Jewish.
No, that was a completely right turn.
Yeah.
So let's talk about what kinds of symptoms that you may have had as you went through all of your treatments, because I know that's really, really tough. You feel terrible anyway. And then you add the treatments that are supposed to help you, but it just knocks you down.
Yeah. Lots of side effects. I have really, really bad neuropathy in my hands and my feet. I'm a total high heel girl because I'm short, and I had to wear tennis shoes. I would trip over my feet quite a bit. I could not keep anything in. I was thankful that it didn't come up. It went down.
Okay.
But I still had an appetite, which was like so crazy. But I felt like my husband and I would go to dinner or something, and they would think that I must have had an eating disorder because I would use the restroom often. But
Did you lose your hair?
So I didn't lose my hair till I finished all my chemo treatments. They had said you won't lose your hair right away. It will thin, and it really thinned. And then when I finished the first initial 12 rounds of chemo, I started getting big bald spots, and so I shaved it. I will say this: my kids were pretty cute when I had warned them and said, "Look, see that, see these bald spots. I'm gonna shave my hair." My head. And my husband is shave bald. So I come home, my boys come home from school, and I have a wig on, and pretty fabulous wig, by the way. And my young, I said, "What do you guys think?" And they're like, "Can we see? Can you take the wig off?" I'm like, "Yeah." So I take it off. And my older one says, I said, "What do you think?" And he said, I think you look good, but I think Daddy looks better bald." I'm like, "Yeah, you gotta love that honesty." And then my younger one says, "Mommy, I think you look beautiful with or without hair." I'm like, oh, heartbreaker.
Wow.
So, my kids were amazing through it. And I try to be as honest as I could be. I obviously they were too young, and I never wanted to say like I could die from this. And truly, I felt like I wasn't going to die from this, and that's always hard. But it made us as a family. Like we'd pray as a family and things like that, and it was great because I got to show them that strength too.
And they were watching.
Yep.
They were watching, and they will carry that with them throughout their lives because they saw how Mom fought.
Yeah.
And won.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so your remission has been almost 8 years.
Yep.
And how have you felt since then?
Honestly, I don't think my body got really somewhat back to normal for probably 3 or 4 years.
Okay.
But I will tell you, the greatest moment was when I found out that I was clear. And I'd love to tell you that story. Basically, right before, I'd finished all chemo and chemo radiation and all of that. And once that was completed, I had to be off of everything for a month. And that was so hard, because I felt like I wasn't fighting anything. And then I found out basically a friend who was going through late stage 4 melanoma had passed away. And I felt like her and I were very much alike, happy people. And it just crushed me, and truly cried for 3 days straight. And my kids were like, "Why are you so upset?" And I was I'm so sad for her. My friend died, but I was really so sad for us, thinking that really could be our reality. So fast forward, 2 weeks prior to diagnosis, 2 weeks prior to getting scans, one night I truly cried and prayed and cried and prayed, and just couldn't shake that sadness, it just, you felt like the whole world is on your shoulders and what's going to happen. So I ended up, I fell asleep, and that next morning I wake up and I looked at my husband and I said, "I'm okay." And he's like, "Okay." And I said, No, I have really good dreams. I know I'm okay. And the next thing I said to him was, "I don't think I have cancer anymore." And it was like, honestly, that was almost like not even a possibility.
Yeah.
And he looks at me and I go, "I know. That's what's on my heart." And 2 weeks later, I have no active cancer in my PET scan.
Your oncologist had to have been amazed.
I was like the talk of this big cancer hospital. They had just never ever seen that before, and it was amazing. It was really amazing. I expected to have some good news, and then in part I was like, even if I don't get news, I know I'm still okay. I just had that overwhelming feeling of peace about it. Like I knew I was going to be okay. I knew I was going to be able to, raise my boys. So.
And you have gone on since then and have gotten really involved with the advocacy group for pancreatic cancer. Tell me about that.
So I'm very involved, and I'm co-chair of the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network Atlanta affiliate. It's pancan.org, and they are by far really an incredible organization. Not only do they, raise funds for research, but they have what's called an advocacy day, and I actually got to go to Washington, D.C. with my younger son and talk to senators, congressmen, women about funding pancreatic cancer. And with increased funding, and probably 70% of the funding for pancreatic cancer is federal funds. Even the Department of Defense is actually funds towards pancreatic cancer now. And so with increased funding is absolutely increased survivors. So it used to be, when I got diagnosed, overall survival rate, someone surviving 5 years or more, was 5%. It's now finally in double digits to 10%, which I think is just phenomenal.
That is incredible. So it shows how that support group and funding makes a huge difference.
Right. But I would say this too. There are so many patient services. They will test people's tumors because they're finding that the molecular sort of makeup of someone's tumor is really an indicator whether a chemotherapy will work or not.
Very interesting.
And I think all cancers are kind of going that way. There's also peer, one-on-one. You can talk to a survivor. Caregivers can talk to caregivers. They will find you a clinical trial. So there's so many services for people going through it, which is incredible.
Well, and you need that when you're going through the most difficult time of your life.
Yep, absolutely.
Wonderful. I'm glad that you're able to be a part of that, because I can only imagine that the people that come and meet you, they have hope because they see how long that you have survived after your diagnosis.
Yeah.
And that has to give them incredible hope.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. My friend, it's almost time for us to be finished.
Wow.
But we got to talk about your one takeaway. What would you want the listeners to remember?
I think we all go through trials and tribulations through our life. And I think that at the end of the day, God always has a plan.
Yes, he does.
I lived by Jeremiah 29:11, for I have plans for you, plans to prosper, give you hope and a future. And I really live by that going through cancer, but I still live by that because I know God has a greater plan. And I think, too, that we always want to control everything in our lives. Not me.
Guilty.
And, I always think God's plan for everyone's life is greater than what you could even imagine.
Yes, it most certainly is. I would agree with that.
I would have never thought or wished upon anyone that I would ever get pancreatic cancer, cancer alone. But how it's truly like a gift in a small package, in a weird package, I would say. But, God had a plan right from the start and really just carried me through that. But I think that you just have to sort of surrender and let him make that plan happen.
I agree completely with the idea that God's plans are so much better than ours. He has that perspective that we don't have. We're in the minutia, and he is in that large plan, and he sees it all, and he knows where it's all going and who you need to connect with and all of those things. And I know they say 20/20 vision is so much better when you can look in hindsight, and it's true, because if I look back on my journey, and you probably feel the same way, I'm like, wow, how all of that just did this, and I didn't see it at the time.
Yeah.
But how beautiful of a picture it was, and how important it was for me to meet that person and for me to go through this, and this person heard my story, and it gave them hope, all of those things.
It's amazing because I would say this. I think God is constantly planting people in your life. And
Yes.
and if you really live your life with your eyes truly wide open, it's amazing because you see miracles every single day. And even if I hadn't won, or beat cancer or even been here today, even in the midst of going through it, I was still the happiest I'd ever been in my entire life because I now had this relationship with Jesus. I knew everything was going to be okay. And I felt like I would have left a legacy for my boys. So, and I know everyone doesn't, unfortunately, win that battle, but I think there's just a gift in that journey.
There is a gift in the journey, and it's hard for us to see it when we're going through it.
Oh, yeah.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Elise, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
joining me today. It's been wonderful to spend time with you. I love hearing your story because I can see how God just came in and shook your world.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
how it's never been the same. And maybe it did take pancreatic cancer for that to happen.
Yeah.
But all that to say is that you have an amazing attitude and you have such an incredible story of overcoming. And what I love most is the attitude that you had through the whole thing, because we're all going to go through things. We
Yep.
all go through things.
Yep.
And you talking about having that positive attitude from the very beginning. And even today, it's
Yeah.
still there.
Yeah.
Because you've seen what that does as far as your mindset. And
Yeah.
so, but thank you for coming.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yes.